What are the entities that you should consider when you're actually going to be forming a formal business entity? The C Corporation is the corporation to form, particularly the Delaware C Corporation, if you think you're going to be attracting venture financing right away. This is because the Delaware C Corporation is the entity that venture capitalists want to invest in. If you're not quite sure the financing that you're going to be able to get right away, then you'll want to consider a limited liability company or an S Corp, and then convert one of those entities into a Delaware C Corp once you attract venture financing. It's important to understand that if you are operating your company and you haven't set up a separate business entity or a formal business entity, then you'll be operating as either a sole proprietorship or a general partnership, depending on the circumstances. If you started the company on your own, then you'll be considered a sole proprietorship. A sole proprietorship is a business that's started by one person who decides to go into business for him or herself. The sole proprietorship is not distinct from the owner that started it. There are some positive attributes to a sole proprietorship. It's easy to form. All you have to do is begin to operate your business, and then you will be considered a sole proprietorship. It's inexpensive because there are no filings that you have to file with the state. You may need to file an assumed name certificate if you decide that you're going to operate the business in a name different than the business of the owner. And the sole proprietorship is not subject to double taxation like the C Corporation is. This means that any of the profits and losses of the company are actually claimed by the owner, him or herself, on his or her taxes. And the sole proprietorship, because it's not a distinct legal entity, is not taxed itself. There are a number of disadvantages to the sole proprietorship, which would make this a form of business entity that you would not want to remain in for long. First, the owner of the sole proprietorship is fully liable for the debts and the obligations of the company. This means that if there's any action or claim against the owner, there is no separate entity that could be responsible for that claim. The owner and the owner's personal assets are fully subject to the debts and obligations of the company. Another disadvantage is that the owner of the sole proprietorship isn't able to issue equity to employees or consultants. There's no way to compensate these individuals with options. And finally, if the owner passes away, then the company goes away. There is no existence of the sole proprietorship if the owner dies. So the sole proprietorship is ideal for individuals who want to start a company quickly and cheaply, and they don't have liability concerns, and they're not concerned about raising outside funds. But for a student technology company, this is not likely to be the scenario. So you really want to make sure that you form a separate business entity if you're a single founder to be able to attract funding and to establish your company. If you're a student technology company and you've got more than one founder and you haven't set up a business entity, then you will likely be considered a general partnership. A general partnership is an association of two or more people who are working together for profit. There are several advantages to the general partnership. First, it's easy to form. There's no required filing at the state level to set up a general partnership. There may be a local filing that you can do, but it's not required. The second advantage is that it's inexpensive to form. There are no state filing fees required for setting up a general partnership. There may be fees associated with having a lawyer develop the partnership agreement between you and your co-founders. So keep that in mind if you have a general partnership. The third advantage is that the partnership is not subject to double taxation as a C corporation. This means that all of the profits and losses of the company go directly to the general partners and are not taxed at the partnership level, only at the individual partner level. One major disadvantage of the general partnership is that each of the general partners are fully liable for the debts and obligations of the general partnership. As with a sole proprietorship, if there's any liability or claims against the general partnership, then the general partner's personal assets could be fully liable for any of these debts and obligations. Another disadvantage is that it's difficult to attract outside investment to the general partnership. This is because investors would be considered general partners, and investors wouldn't want to take on that risk of being fully liable for any of the debts and obligations of the partnership. Another disadvantage is that general partners have fiduciary obligations to each other. Fiduciary obligations are heightened obligations to act in the best interest of the general partnership. These obligations can be altered with a limited liability company or a corporation, but can't with a general partnership. So a general partnership is ideal for founders who want to get set up quickly, inexpensively. There's very little liability concern and aren't likely to get outside investment. As a student technology company, this isn't likely to be the case, but it's important to understand if you don't set up a separate entity, this is how you will be viewed legally.